in the beginning, they don't call you a hero. They call you an adventurer. Nobody knew who you were. The further you traveled from your home city, the less your past seemed to matter. You arrived somewhere new as another traveler on the road. A silhouette by a campfire. A figure passing through the city gate. A name in a group invitation. And then, little by little, people started recognizing that name. Of the cleric who stayed after a lost battle to resurrect the fallen. The shaman who always buffed people by the bank. The enchanter who took the time to explain something instead of rushing ahead. Reputation traveled slowly. It passed from group to group. From people remembering how it felt after spending time with you. The world was large, but it also felt connected. So, as an adventurer, finding your place in a new world would be daunting. The rules aren't always obvious, and everyone else seems to know something you don't. Worlds like EverQuest understood this. In a harsh and dangerous world, small acts of kindness stood out. They also taught us something about the world we stepped into. Maybe at first, you watched from a distance, followed people's lead. And this is why seasoned adventurers or heroes in these worlds matter too. Their etiquette and mannerisms will shape the next generation of players. Which brings me back to some of the stories people shared on my EverQuest video. Something about that era stayed with people for years. They're about friendships and experiences. Names they still remember. The stranger who became a real-life friend, or the great escape from a failed raid attempt. The people who made a difference in their early journey, whether through gear or buffs. These stories emerged naturally from a world that encouraged players to rely on one another. And over time, those small interactions became something larger. Their ventures together created stories that people still tell 20 years later, and importantly are helping shape new worlds and new games, influencing and teaching people like myself who weren't there in 1999. But as new adventurers, new stories can still emerge. I recently introduced a friend to Monsters and Memories. One of the first things he noticed was how often strangers stopped to help. Whether it was a movement speed buff to make the trek into the desert an easier one, or a regen spell beside a campfire after a difficult pull. Small gifts, but as a new player, these moments left an impression. Both for your own ease of access into the world and also subtly changing the type of player you'll become. And then he passed it forward, stopping to buff people along the roadside, keeping the tradition alive. This is what I'm talking about when I mention how veterans influencing new players is such an important mechanism in these worlds. And from my experience in the beta, I can see it. For example, later that same evening, I was soloing on my paladin in the Sun-Greet Strand. An ogre stopped near my camp. He stopped to buff me and then asked if he could grab some ore hidden behind the enemies I was fighting. He told me to take my time and waited while I split the camp. When one of the Ashira wandered onto him, he left it untouched so the kill would still belong to me, even checking in to make sure I was okay handling the camp. The whole interaction lasted a few minutes, a small yet important interaction that we need to remember and carry forward as we continue building this community. Just two players sharing the same space, understanding one another. I was inspired to make this video partially because of where I'm at in life. I find myself starting over as an adventurer again. After arriving in Japan, that feeling became familiar again. There are routines here, small courtesies, things people do without being asked. A quiet effort to leave shared spaces a little better than they found them. At first, those customs can feel invisible, difficult. Then one day, you start noticing them everywhere. In train stations, on sidewalks, on buses. Millions of people moving through the same world together, and yet somehow maintaining balance. The older I get, the more I appreciate worlds that encourage that awareness. Worlds where the person next to you matters. Worlds where your actions leave an impression. Where belonging takes time. An adventurer begins as a stranger, a traveler, a newcomer. And somewhere along the road, through patience, through etiquette, through showing up again and again, a place begins to feel familiar. And familiar places begin to feel like home. Maybe that's why the title always stayed with me. Not hero, not champion, just an adventurer. A person learning how to live inside a world larger than themselves.